Wow. Episode 10. That's unreal. Man, like I can't believe we're already 10 episodes into season 2. This is just I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am, and that you're learning some things, and that you're growing in your relationship with God, and you're growing in your love for God. But I hope this channel is just encouraging you guys to dive deeper into the Word. So today we are talking about 1 Timothy 5. Not finishing, we have one more chapter to go, but working on our 1 Timothy Bible study. But so basically for this video, we're talking about how our religion, our beliefs as Christians means we care for others and means we treat other people well. So before we get started, let's just dive into some prayer. Dear God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for coffee. I thank you for all just the blessings that you've given us. And I just thank you that I get to sit here making this video and just diving into your word. And I pray that you just reveal yourself to us through your word today, and that you just help us to come out of this with some new thing that we now know about you and about how you want us to live, God. And I just thank you for this day, and I just thank you for the people that are watching this, and you are good. Amen. Okay, so I want to preface this video by just saying that this is in the context of a church. So as Paul is writing this to 1 Timothy, right, like as we've been over many times, it's a pastoral epistle. So it's meant to be in the context of a church, but there are things that we can learn from this, obviously for dealing with people in the church, but also for handling things outside of the church. But anyways, let's get into this. For this video, it would definitely be helpful if you guys want to read the whole chapter and then come back. But if you don't want to, we are going to read a few select verses. But if you'd like to right now go and read the whole chapter, I would definitely encourage you to do so. But anyways, we're going to dive into verses 1 through 3. Do not rebuke an older man, but encourage him as you would a father, younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters in all purity. Honor widows who are truly widows. Okay, so in these first few verses, he's telling Timothy how to deal with people in the church. And so he starts off talking about rebuking, and he emphasizes that it needs to be a gentle rebuke. And in regards to men, it needs to respect the age and the position of men, and not just wildly rebuking everybody. But then going into younger men, seeing the younger men as brothers and friends, and it's not a competition. You're not seeking to find flaws in everybody, but you're loving people. And then the same thing with women. Timothy's told to respect women, and if necessary, rebuke them respectively. And so he talks about older women as mothers and younger women as sisters. It echoes what he says about the males. But then there is one line that's different, and that's where Paul says in all purity when talking about dealing with women. And so this is important because it means that Timothy's actions must not only be respectful, but also free from lust and sexual sin, which is very important being a male leader in the church dealing with female church members. Paul then goes on to talk about helping those in need. He talks about widows, how Timothy and the church should support widows, but be able to recognize widows who aren't actually widows and who don't actually need support. So he has a whole bunch of stuff to say about widows who are actually widows, and I don't want to get too much into that because it would just take too much time. But yeah, so that's kind of the next section. I do want to point out one verse from that section, and it's where Paul says in verse 8, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." So I want to point out this verse because I think in it we see how central caring for others, providing for others, and supporting for others is to being a Christian. Okay, so now we're going to get into verses 17 and 19. Now we're going to get into verses 17 and 19. Now we're going to get into verses 17 and 19 through 20. And we're moving into talking about elders. So let's dive into these verses. Let the elders who rule well be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who labor in preaching and teaching. Do not admit a charge against an elder except on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. As for those who persist in sin, rebuke them in the presence of all, so that the rest may stand in fear. Okay, so right at the start, Paul talks about double honor, and he talks about these elders who both rule well and teach and preach well. They should be honored and supported even more. Like they need to be supported. And I think it's interesting because he goes from this dialogue on supporting widows. Okay, so that's kind of something like supporting widows. Okay, that makes sense. Like obviously widows are in need, like support them. But a lot of people might not realize how much in need the leaders in the church are of support. And whether that's financial or whether that's other types of support, people who are laboring in preaching and teaching and ruling as it talks about here, they are in need of support from the rest of the church. So then Paul goes into talking about rebuking elders, and he says here that you have to be very careful. So he's talking to Timothy and saying, Timothy, you have to be very careful and you need evidence. Okay, so don't go around rebuking elders if you don't have solid evidence. He talks about 2 or 3 witnesses. Like you need to be certain. But ultimately, so like you have to be careful, but ultimately don't sweep it under the rug. Don't get caught up in church hierarchy to the point where no one is pointing out this blatant sin in the leaders of the church. Because if there's sin, it needs to be dealt with. That's how I interpret Paul's message here. There's also a verse about wine here near the end that people like, and some medical advice that Paul's given to Timothy about drinking wine. You can look it up for yourself. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of this passage. So first we have how to treat and rebuke men and women in the church. And then we have how to treat widows, moving into how to treat and rebuke elders, and finally, Paul's further advice for Timothy. Okay, so what are the big ideas? So rebuking. We need to be aware of sin in our lives and in the lives of others, but rebuking is not about pointing out flaws in each other. That's why I think this idea of a gentle rebuke is emphasized and a careful rebuke is emphasized, because it's ultimately about caring for each other, caring for people in the church, and helping us all to deal with the sin that is so prevalent in all of our lives. The other big idea is taking care of each other. The church is a fantastic place, and we need to support and care for each other. That's what makes it a good place, and we need to rebuke each other when necessary out of love. All right, folks, that is the video. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned some things about 1 Timothy 5. Yeah, hit the little subscribe button for more videos every single week. Drop a comment if you're so inclined. Like the video. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next